Pleasure to have one of the greatest ladies in Australian alternate media come and join us, Maria Zeee. Congratulations on your success so far, and thanks for spending a bit of time on the Voice of Freedom.
I really appreciate it, Carl. I don't call it success until we take these maniacs down, and when I say that, disclaimer, not calling for violence or anything of that nature. We just need to see victory. So we can call it success once we see the victory, Carl. But I think we've made great tremendously in waking up the masses, and we need to keep up that momentum.
Absolutely. Before we get on to the topics we've talked about discussing, I think I'm getting a lot of reaction from the people that I meet in the streets, and I'm sure you do too, things are starting to be seen to be happening. Do you feel that we're making when I say we, I mean the general alt media are making an impression on normies and opening up this area a little more?
Look, I have to be honest. X has played a huge part in number one, opening up the floodgates of information. Number two, showing us just how many people actually have questions. When there was such a huge suppression of information on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and all of the big tech platforms, as much as I have my reservations about Elon and X and all of that sort of stuff, when it was all suppressed, we felt like we were a very small group of people. Now that you have all of these people able to speak on at least one major platform, it seems like either more have woken up or people, at least there's more of us than we thought. My observations from talking to people in person, and I try to do that everywhere I go, Carl, talk to strangers at shops and on the street and wherever it may be, with whatever time I get outdoors and out of this studio. I find that people have questions, and they don't like the surveillance state. They don't like the elimination of cash. They don't like the idea of central bank digital currency. Once I explain that to them, they're absolutely against it. And when I tell them that the government wants to ban them eating meat, for example, they say, what? And, remember how you got injected so you can travel, but the plan is to actually have you traveling no more than 1,500 kilometers per person every 3 years. And they're just infuriated about that. And so I think that there are other talking points other than the injections that we can use to reach people. CBDC, digital ID, and all of that sort of stuff is one of them. And this Optus blunder is just a fantastic talking point for people. Yeah. Imagine if everything was online and digital. Imagine if a crash like that happened for longer. Can you really trust these systems? No, you can't.
No. A great wake-up call, as you say, yesterday. People getting, you suffered. How did you go for a day without technology?
What I do, and helping humanity is that I do. But if the internet shut down in the world forever and never came back, I seriously think the world would be a better place. We'd go back to farming. We'd go back to caring for our neighbors face to face rather than living our lives through screens. So I think any break from the internet is welcome. But I did have an issue in the morning because even some of my backup systems weren't working. It wasn't just affected. Telstra customers were affected as well, which is why I don't believe this mainstream narrative of, it's all Optus. And I spoke about the fact that, 2GB and Channel 7 did this huge theatrical grilling of the Optus CEO. And yet it wasn't only Optus that was affected. If Telstra was also affected, they claim it was due to an influx of customers, but if they were also affected, influx of customers shouldn't affect your ability for your network to work. Those are two different things.
Yeah.
So I think that there's more to this. That's right. I think there's something bigger has gone on here. But for me in the morning, I drove around for hours trying to find a spot with Wi-Fi so I could do InfoWars in the morning. Couldn't do it. Wow. In the end, my internet cut out right as I was about to go live, which was terrible for them, depending on this broadcast. I mean, they have other presenters, but it was terrible to let them down. And I had other interviews scheduled, whatever. So you know, big deal for me, my personal impact. I just think, how are we actually going to cope when something like a major cyber attack comes out? And, I realize they could be doing anything right now and we wouldn't know about ability to poke around, investigate, find out what they're up to. If we didn't have this, how the people would be completely uninformed of what these maniac governments are up to. So it's a
I think
double-edged sword, really.
I think it might also slow down the delivery of the systems too, because we
Mm,
have such a wide spread of technology. It's very easy to get a message disseminated to a lot of people very quickly. But if all that goes down, and that includes the wrong kind of messaging,
yes.
so if that ability is lost to them, I have a theory. I think the country will go into shock for about 5 days without having any electrical, or internet connectivity. I think the world and people in general will go into shock for 5 days. But after 5 days, you'll find that they will very quickly go and revert to doing what we used to do before there was no mobile
Yep.
phones. For those people who've not lived a life where mobile phones didn't exist, some of us are of a certain age where we remember mobile phones being introduced. You might find that information war that is being used against us at the moment, they flood us with their misinformation. That too gets slowed down. And it's going to require a bit more face to face representation from these people to try and convince us on the ground without our digital devices that what they're saying is real. Do you think that's a valid point going forward?
Yeah. The information war in general, Carl, is so multifaceted. Right now, even when things matter, right, in the world, like for example, what's happening in the Middle East, the way that they have been able to suppress information in the past, uh, shows me that we're only hearing about things if they want us to hear about them.
Yeah.
The mainstream media, suddenly talking about death and destruction when millions have been killed by the COVID injections, is no, and there was a zero information from the mainstream media, not even a peep about that. And now all of a sudden they care about death and destruction. This is, and that's all you hear. That's all you hear everywhere. There's a reason for that. The
Mm.
reason why you're allowed to see images on Instagram, even though they're somewhat suppressed, there's a reason why they're allowing that. If we think that the ways in which they censored us, government and big tech colluded during the time of COVID to censor us, and they haven't learnt from that and how to do it better, and that they wouldn't be doing it even illegally as they were during those times. I mean, people say, oh yeah, but they were caught. Yeah, they were caught censoring, and there have been zero repercussions. In fact, the government in the US violated the Constitution by getting involved in people's First Amendment rights, for example. They're still the government. There have
Mm.
been no repercussions. So you can go and catch them all you want. No one's holding these criminals accountable. So what makes you think that they wouldn't be doing that right now? There is a control of the information, a manipulation of the information. And as times go on, Carl, especially with the element of AI, that becomes much more difficult to sift through. It really requires people to remove their emotions from it and review the information that's coming at them, with a cool head.
AI is going to be such a threat to us going forward. I don't know that people are fully aware of just how deeply it reaches into our society already and how difficult it is to tell the difference between an AI uh, construct and a real person. And a lot of particularly older people are being led down scam streets and all sorts of things
Yep.
with AI at the moment, and
Yep.
something to be aware of. And of course, they're allowing it into schools from next year. Chat GPT will be available to students around Australia. So they won't even have to write their own essays. Anyway, we're not really onto the topic that we originally thought we were going to talk about. And I know I've only got limited time with you because you are a busy lady. So let's get onto it. I am absolutely terrified of something called natural accounting that the UN and Australia are leaping towards adopting. Can you explain what this will do to our country?
Yeah, it's the US and Australia. So basically, recently, we all know Albanese went over to see President Obama, I mean Biden, and they spoke about our alliance and all this sort of stuff. But when you read the White House presser and have a look at what some of those things in there that they actually agreed to, or what this meeting was actually about, you see that for the Australian government, or those posing as the government, really failed with their voice campaign. Australians, for the most part, said no. I dare say that a majority of Australians that said no, probably didn't know about the plans for UN 30 by 30, which is actually at the core of every time that Australia pretends to care about Aboriginal people. It is about taking our land, taking Australia's land, I should say, and giving it to the UN. That's what this whole thing is about. And if you read UNDRIP, and if you read the UN 30 by 30 and the Kunming Montreal framework, global framework, then you really understand what you have to understand those documents to understand natural capital accounting. So, but Albanese goes over there. Microsoft are about to invest $5 billion in Australia to help build what they call 6 cyber shields. And they say that by 2030, Australia will be the world leader in all things cyber, right? So multiple sources. This, as we saw with the lockdowns, Australia was the test bed for smart cities by way of you can't leave your local government area, or you can't go outside of a 5-kilometer radius. Australia was the test bed for how much could we shoot peaceful protesters without, a revolution. Australia was the test bed, the biggest in the West. Melbourne was kept locked down for the longest time of any other city in the West. That was a UN endorsed Melbourne experiment. It's a published experiment which Monash University took down after I exposed them. So, apparently they were proud of their experiment, not so much after I bring it to the whole world on InfoWars, though. So, Australia is the test bed for so much of this because our nation has been so compliant and dumbed down for so long, and got injected so they could go back to the pub. So many of them, so many. It's just shocking. But anyway, thank God not all of them are like that, and I love our people. But the reason I'm telling you about this is because when they say that Australia is expected to be the world leader in all things cyber, what they're actually telling you is we're going to be one of the first people that transition Australians into a digital prison, because they want you to live in the cloud. They don't want you to have a real life. And living in that cloud depends on your compliance with the UN 100's Age of Global Enlightenment and everything that they plan on achieving as part of Agenda 2030. And so when they talk about natural capital accounting, this is taking stock, this concept of natural capital accounting, taking stock of every single resource that is available on Earth, essentially digitally tagging it. And this was told to me by a former Silicon Valley engineer, Aman Jabi, months and months ago, that they were actually digitally tagging every leaf, every tree, everything had its own tag, and was being digitally mapped in what they really refer to as a digital twin. So everything is tagged, including human beings. Now, when they talk about advances in the net zero technology acceleration partnership, I know it's taking me a long time to explain the answer to your question, Carl, but people need to understand why this, how it all fits in together. So, one of their goals is, for example, carbon dioxide removal. They want to remove carbon dioxide, which everything that's alive needs to live.
Yeah.
And facilitate a rapid transition to what they call a zero carbon electricity grid. And that they say that non-CO2 pollutants are the key driver of climate change. Therefore, both countries, Australia and the US, are going to take strong action to mitigate methane specifically, which means eliminate cattle, eliminate agriculture. And we already know, they're talking about, if you look at Canada's documents, for example, on biodigital convergence, where they explain this sort of AI fake living that you're going to do, where you don't really live a real life anymore. You have printed meat on your counter in your little communal living smart city pod where you share, transgender bathrooms with all the other blue haired freaks. and you know, this is how you live your life. And any like actual living that you do is when you plug into the metaverse and live your life out there. And so they are actually talking about when they say natural capital, it can be defined as the world's stocks, I'm reading off my notes here, of natural assets, which include geology, soil, air, water, and all living things, including humans. And an example of natural capital accounting is when, you know, say a municipality says, okay, well, we need this much water going to this area and this much water going to this area. But when you consider the digital ledger and the social credit system and digital ID, you see how they will actually use this to control your access to these natural resources, especially when you think about the fact that the goal of UN 30 by 30, which they say is to take 30% of every country and conserve it. Conservation and the fact that you, sir, have a very bad social credit score and you're hurting our conservation efforts, we're just going to limit the water to your household today. Do you know, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they don't explicitly it so that you can't have access to certain things, like what you can't buy meat. Oh, okay. So what if I'm caught in this digital gulag that they're building? What if I'm caught going in person to a farmer and using my, I don't know, my gold shavings to buy some meat? Are you going to stop the water coming to my house because I've defied AI over here? Well, yeah, that's what they're saying. I think people really, I'm sorry, go on.
No, they're going to put restraints on every aspect of our life that we need for survival.
Yes,
so
they will.
Water, food, housing, everything will be restrained, and your social credit score will dictate whether or not you get access to any of it.
Yes, and already employers are being told that they need to be, I think recently they were discussing in Australia how employers are going to start monitoring their employees' carbon emissions on their way to work. And, you know, they need to start submitting that to the tax office. What the hell do you mean? What does the tax office that already rapes me for my taxes have to do with, you know, how much carbon I've emitted on the way to work? So it's all linking in this digital prison, and people think, oh, well, I just don't have to comply with any of it. Yeah, that's fine. But what do you do with the street light that can kill you if you leave your little 15-minute zone? You know, if we don't fight and if you don't think they would do that, if you don't think they would just kill you on impact, they did it just 2 years ago. People are still dying and they're, you know, they don't care. So don't ever forget how vile and evil and destructive these people are and how far they would go to control you. And so, you know, I just think, Carl, if we don't face the absolute devastating control that they want to have over us and fight every aspect of it, ultimately, you know, if we stay in a state of denial, they're going to succeed. You can't deny what your enemy's trying to achieve. You know, your enemy, you know that your enemy's hiding over there in one of your foxholes waiting for your soldiers to go in, and you just go, oh, don't worry about it. Well, no, you get rid of the enemy from that foxhole.
Yep. You go in and you shoot. You get them out.
Doesn't make sense to just pretend they're not there.
No. But that's, well, is apathy in Australia the biggest problem?
I don't know that it's even just an Australian problem, Carl. I gave an example recently, and this example really stuck with me. I was on an X space and I was talking about the international health regulations and what they're aiming to achieve, and, you know, who the doctors that I've spoken to that speak about how broad the control system is and what they would actually be able to enforce when it comes to the Global Pandemic Fund and the IMF, and, you know, the sanctions that they can put on countries in terms of even life-saving medications if the population doesn't agree and doesn't mass vaccinate, for example. They can actually impose sanctions on access to other healthcare other life-saving medications. And then all of a sudden, your choice to not get injected doesn't just mean you're killing grandma because of COVID. You're also killing grandma who has cancer, who can't access her cancer meds now because of compliance. You see how it becomes actually even more violent did during COVID in terms of the response of the population towards one another. It's going to be absolute hell if these people get away with it. But anyway, this guy came on, it was halftime in the Super Bowl, and he joins into the Twitter space and he goes, I've just come on during time. They're not going to get away with this. Our US Constitution is really strong. And then he resumed watching the Super Bowl after he gave his 2 cents. And he didn't stick around to hear why he was so wrong. People have this idea that, a small handful of people not complying is going to stop the power. No. Board, and you need just how serious this is. The US Constitution's very strong. Yeah, they still killed the military with unconstitutional injections.
Yep.
Where was your constitution then?
Yep.
These people don't care about the rule of law.
No, and they bank on the fact that nobody actually truly understands it, therefore can't raise a reasonable or lawful argument against what they're doing. So it's ridiculous. Look, I know you have to get going. There's one thing I want to touch on very quickly. Stu Peters this morning came out with a warning about water. Now, we've seen, watch the water videos and all that. And we've been speaking about water for a couple of years. But his warning today was quite direct. Don't drink the water.
Yeah, so I know that they found contaminated water in the United States. There have been some people looking at the water supply. I haven't done enough digging into what exactly that contamination is, and I also don't know whether any Australians are looking at the water supply and whether there's contamination. Certainly, yes, when I know more, I'll report on it. Okay, there are. Great, great. Certainly when I know more, I'll report on it. What I would say to that, Carl, is number one, the World Economic Forum recently, there was a video clip that went viral of, I don't know what her name was. She was a professor saying, climate change is a little bit obscure, but people really understand water. Now, when they were talking about this, they were talking about everyone having equal access to water. Okay. So say, for example, some countries, like in Africa, where, water is much harder to access than it is here in Australia. Everyone needs equal access. And that's something that we can all understand. This is under their sort of one world model, right? The point is that they've never cared about poor countries. They haven't started now. They want us all to be poor. And so what they're saying is, we're going to give water here and take it from you to make sure they have it, which is what they're doing with vaccines too, right? Oh, the poorer countries didn't get access, so we've got to manufacture more so everyone's got some. But we're gonna have to take it from you to give it here, and conservation, and you're contributing to the climate, so you're actually are they poisoning the water? Are they poisoning the air? Are they poisoning our food? Yes. And they have been for many years. Is it now a point where you absolutely cannot trust the water supply? I don't have evidence for that right now, but I, on a personal level, haven't trusted their water supply for years. No. So if you've got the ability to access natural springs, or if you've got a well, or if you've got a property where you can have a well, get onto that. And know where the water comes from. And, I think it's clear to everyone right now, Carl, that they'll stop at nothing to poison us, kill us, destroy us. And so we've got to be vigilant with anything that we put into our bodies. I wonder how long it'll be before we're all walking around with, Mad Max nuclear war masks.
Yeah, you're right. And fighting for fuel on the roads.
Yeah.
A bit like Mad Max.
Yep.
Maria, I know you have to go. Thank you very much for spending the time with us today that you can. Congratulations again on the success that you're having. You're doing a great job. I've said that right from the word go. You were right onto it, and you're
broadcast, and it's like I can't tell you everything in under 100 hours. It's so complex, and so I come on with you and I just sort of smash everyone with all this bad news. And so I don't mean for that to be overwhelming for people. I just want you to understand how serious this is. And then when you're talking to people on the ground, think about where that person is at. Think about where their understanding is at, and how you can simplify it for that individual so that they understand they really have to join the resistance, if you will. Because if they don't, they're all at risk, including millionaires who think they're safe, but with their money, they're not. And so, the purpose of this level of information is to warn the world. No, it's not all just going to be okay tomorrow. It's not just going to all be swept under the rug. These maniacs want to achieve the Great Reset. They will stop at nothing. And so we've got to become stronger. We really have to become more resilient. Someone recently told me they don't like the word resilient because it's been co-opted. I don't care if they co-opt it. I like the word resilient. We need to be resilient. I don't care if they co-opted the rainbow. The rainbow's still a really beautiful thing that God made. So, it's like our strength right now is in not being afraid or affected by the things that they're doing, but saying it doesn't matter. All these things that you've thrown at us, we are still not going to bow. And I think we have to keep sending that message back to the powers that be, if you will, Carl. And I do see that strength building in people. I see people becoming stronger and saying, I will never submit, and I will keep fighting until the end. And I just hope that this does inspire people to keep doing that. I know we're stronger than we think.
Absolutely. And I'm seeing it every day with the people I'm meeting on the streets as I'm traveling around too. They're a very committed bunch, and that bunch is getting bigger. You go and do the things you've got to do. You've got to be important in other places. So thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Thank you so much for all of your work as well. And thank you for your time today. I really do appreciate it.
There you go. The lovely Maria Zeee. I had to catch up with her earlier today. So she was busy flat out doing other things, and I think around about now she's probably sleeping. But very insightful view into the world and what's going on, particularly with the UN and Australia being signed over without the people agreeing to it in any way, shape, or form, to this UNDRIP bullshit. Make sure you get onto your local member, your local senator, your local House of Representatives member, and make sure you let them know that you don't want this to happen, if that's the way that you feel. Clearly, if you think that this is all a great thing to do, then you'll probably do nothing and win anyway. So if you don't agree with it, then be involved. Send a letter. It's only an email these days to your local member. And make sure you do it to your local person, because as I've discovered, they don't bother answering you if you don't come from the electorate. Yeah, wonderful stuff. Maria said a couple of interesting things about the millionaires. What we need to understand, the millionaires think that they won't be affected by this. Well, the millionaires view us, as the ants. We're just, for the most part, particularly the big multimillionaires. But the billionaires view the millionaires like that. And it's the multi-billionaires that view the other billionaires like that. So there is a very large pyramid, if you like, all based on wealth and how much wealth you've managed to get out of the only source that creates it. Hold your hand up if you're one of those folks. Yep. Us. We're the only thing that creates the wealth. There is no wealth if we don't dig it out of the ground. Somebody's got to do it. And that's what they're trying to do, eliminate us, because very shortly AI and robotics will be able to take over all of that. And they won't have to be complaining and dealing with unions and, having to pay overtime and all that sort of shit. All they got to do is pay mechanics, or in robotics cases, robotic engineers, to essentially program other robots to fix the robots that are doing the work. That's how it'll be. And us, well, we'll get to go and live in that wonderful, wonderful little place called the metaverse. That's why they're getting us ready with goggles and 3D and all that wonderful realm. Some of you might be familiar with an old game. I don't know if it's still around. It was called Second Life. it was sort of based on The Sims, and Second Life enabled you, if you wanted to create an entire Second Life online, complete with an avatar, and you got to walk around these environments, if you like, and bump into complete strangers. And for the most part, I believe it was more hooking up for online sort of sex, or without the sex part. I never got involved, but I do know that Second Life was a very big part of a lot of people's lives and responsible for the breakup of a number of marriages, including two people very close to me, who got into it thinking it was just a game, and a bit like The Sims, which you were playing on whatever your favorite platform was at the time, where you got to build a home and then build a city or a town and a city, become a businessman, that kind of thing, learn how to run your house right. Or you could set your house up as a complete drug den, and you'd get those types dropping in. Well, Second Life took it a step further than that. So, and I'm sure that there are other games, or whatever they call them, out there now that are similar in stature. Well, what they've planned for us is to live, essentially, put our minds in a state where we accept that going out is putting on that headset and seeing, experiencing in the cloud what we should be able to do in real life, whether that's walking through a forest or walking to the beach or, going for a swim. I don't quite understand how you're going to get wet. But I guess if you've ever been to Movie World or any of those amusement parks, they've got a theatre in them these days, and they've got 4D theatres which spray you. So, yeah, maybe they're going to have a robot throw a bucket of water at you and make you believe you're at the beach. I don't know. But that's where they're pushing us, and this is why they create communities online, and this is why they are pushing you to save everything to the cloud. There is no fucking cloud, people. Wake up. The cloud is a computer. The cloud is a very, 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 very big network of computers. And computers you don't have access to, other than if they let you, or you pay. So that's where your life is going to be, in the cloud, with a nice little headset on, sitting in a nice comfortable chair in the small government-issued apartment that you will be allowed to live in as long as you are productive. And once you become unproductive, then alternative measures will need to be introduced. Because what's the point of, once again, think of us like cattle, folks. Think of what a farmer would do if dairy cow broke its two front legs. Now, is he going to go and get the vet and, I don't know, a wheelchair for a cow that's broken its two front legs? Or is he going to go and pick up the nearest rock, because he's not allowed to use a gun anymore, not allowed to have one, and beat the cow to death because it would be simpler? It's just how it's going to be. How it's going to be. And it's shocking to think that we've allowed it happily to get this far. And we have all allowed it, despite, our levels of awakeness. We've allowed it to get this far. We've been involved in a certain number of elections. And yes, I guess it takes a certain number of elections for you to figure out that it's all bullshit. And that's why only people of a certain age, or more people of a certain age, are involved in this movement than anybody else, particularly of the younger movement. It's great to see that there seems to be a lot more younger folks coming on board. That's awesome. But we need more. We need a lot more. Speaking of a lot more, Saturday, if you're in Melbourne, anywhere around Melbourne, or you're thinking of coming anywhere from a long way away, come early, because Melbourne is, of course, going to host the Remembrance Day ceremony at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning at the Shrine of Remembrance. Now, if you've never been to a Remembrance Day ceremony, they are truly solemn, wonderful services, not unlike Anzac Day, except this is a lot smaller. There won't be tens of thousands of people. So if you're concerned about large crowds and parking and all that sort of stuff, don't be. We're not expecting a very large crowd at all, but more the merrier. It is an important time to come together. I think Darren Bergwerf, well, I know Darren Bergwerf will be there because I'm following him there. Tim Dwyer will be there. There are quite a few people coming from Sydney, I believe. It's going to be a coming together, a sign of respect for our fallen on Remembrance Day at the Shrine. So if you can come and join us, we would love to see you. The Shrine is very easy to find. Just head out St Kilda Road and you'll bump into it. It's a big pointy thing. Looks like a pyramid. Stands out a bit. We look forward to seeing you there. That would be very good. Now, I came across in my search today for some bits and pieces to try and uplift us a little bit. I came across a young man who I found extremely uplifting. Have a listen to this.
So the bottom line is that we keep evolving, right? And the Bible was written in different ways to interpret it. Now, you said something about the Bible and using the letters going backwards in the Fibonacci theory. Can you explain that? Because that's amazing.
In certain parts of the Bible, you can get literally, if you convert the letters to numbers.
Speak a little louder if you can.
The Fibonacci sequence, if you invert, of course. But in certain important parts of the book, you'll take certain parts out and you'll get numbers, which seem random, but they're actually frequencies of resonance that line up with what's called the Fibonacci spiral. And the Fibonacci spiral is kind of weird for the fact that it's called literally God's thumbprint, which is a little bit weird considering that we have spiral galaxies, spirals in our thumbs, spirals in our ears. Literally, almost every organism on the planet or object we have found has had some sort of reminiscence of Fibonacci in it. And I don't know, it's called God's trademark or God's thumbprint, but I don't know. It's just a coincidence, I guess.
Seriously, how smart are some of these kids? That kid is really smart. Really, really smart.
And tell us your name and what you do for a living.
Hi, I'm Maxwell Lahin, and I am a physicist, inventor, entrepreneur, and, well, I guess change maker. I'm 13, and I feel like I can change the world, and I've already started my positive impact on it.
What have you done? How have you changed the world so far?
So aside from inventing a whole bunch of different stuff that probably won't matter now, but my most recent thing, which has gotten me a little bit of attention online, is my energy device, where I extract electromagnetic energy from everything around us and convert it into electrical energy. In other words, a stream of unlimited energy. So, you know.
So, do you think you can solve our energy crisis here on planet Earth?
I believe I will, and I believe I already have solved the main problem. Now it's just a matter of, getting this out there.
And what do you need to be able to get this out there? You just need somebody to watch this video and say, here's some money, or what do you need?
Well, all I can think of really is support, Throughout history, people like me have been prosecuted and killed, murdered, and a lot of other very horrible things. And if I have support from a lot of people, I don't think that that will happen in our modern day and age. We're a little bit too civilized for that. So all I'm saying is that if you think the world should be a better place too, then, just support.
Amazing, from a 13-year-old young man. It turns out that he is a very, very big fan of Nikola Tesla, who would know. That fellow interviewing him actually asked him who did he think he was reincarnated as, or would he like to be reincarnated as? And he brought up Tesla, but said, no, I don't think I am Nikola Tesla reincarnated. I'm just a dedicated follower of his works. He is also an extremely, as you find with, I suppose, anybody this intelligent, he has some interesting views on the Bible. And, well, I'll save the best bit till last.
What is God?
Okay, so a lot of people think God is, quite in the biblical sense, a guy sitting up on a cloud who controls the universe, frankly, and has created all life. But my definition of God is not like that. I don't believe God is a person or entity. God is just another form of energy, or actually is energy. Himself, well, not even himself, itself. For the fact that you look at the Bible and other really, awesome but extremely vague and unreliable sources in religion that hold these sources that we find and facts that we find, or so-called facts that we find, and really a lot of people think it's just about faith. But if you relate the Bible to quantum physics and apply most of the laws actually in less of a figurative sense, but more of a literal sense, and replace it with things like the universe, you'll eventually find out that it explains in-depth quantum physics and astrophysics experiments and theories. Well, maybe not theories, because maybe now they're proven. Who knows? Maybe the Bible isn't a story of something that happened on Earth, but maybe a story of how our universe began. For the fact that, honestly, I don't really buy into the literal biblical sense. Like, God is literally a guy who looks like us, who sits up in an alternate realm that's in our clouds and, watches over all of us. But I guess you could say that he's an energy form that created all, is all, and is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. God, or energy, lives within us, through us, and
is us,
frankly.
So you said what? That God is the energy that is in us, created us, and is us. Is that your definition?
Yep.
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Sort of, yeah. God is energy. That's my thing. And I mean, like, you look at dimensional theory, and eventually we have, a singularity at the beginning of the universe that is energy. And then, eventually that begins to slow down in vibration due to entropy or some other law of that sort. And then, first you get photonic light, and then that slows down, and then we get matter, and then that slows down. And then who else knows what comes next? We have gravity, and then we have time, all coming in at one sense. I mean, does that sound like origin story to you? It kind of does a little bit to me, but, maybe that's just a coincidence. Maybe these philosophers, or unreliable monks, we call them, that lived up in the mountains and wrote this weird book that doesn't have any factual evidence behind it, maybe they were quantum physicists ahead of their time, and maybe they're just trying to tell people, who lived a crazy long time ago, that there is an entire new quantum world out there. But, education wasn't too good back then, so I guess they had to simplify intense quantum physics to something that a 5-year-old could understand. Thus the Bible, right?
Something that a 5-year-old could understand. But when you think about his logic, interesting. I didn't catch his name. I've been trying to figure it out. It's not Max London. I've been trying to get a bit more background on him, just to try and look at his patents and see what else he's come up with. It's interesting. I heard also today that in Melbourne, apparently, someone down here has registered a patent too for something based on Nikola Tesla technology, I'm led to believe. So, and that's, I think, also to do with electromagnetic energy. So looking forward to finding out a bit more about that. I've had some people contact today and ask me how the new car is going. I took it out for a spin today. There you go. It's had another spin. Ha ha. Very funny. Tomorrow, tomorrow's going to be an interesting day. I may not get a chance to put too much together, but we will have a show because I'll be in the vicinity of Darren Bergworth. Why won't I have much time? Well, tomorrow I'm hoping to catch up with Bill. I don't know if you can see. Hold it in front of me. You'll probably see that. You see that? That needs to somehow go into this thing. And this bit needs to go somewhere back here and then get covered up with this bit. And hopefully when that happens, and all those bits, provided there aren't any more bits that I didn't find because there was nothing left of them. Once reinstalled, and this is a little rubber thing, hopefully not ripped. It doesn't seem like it's ripped. But once all those bits are back where they should be in something called the mixer, then I should have LPG back on the beast. Yay! So that will be a joyous day if that happens. So I'm hopefully going to catch up with a man named Bill somewhere on the side street, somewhere in Melbourne, and he's going to hopefully help me get back on the road with that. So fingers crossed that that comes to fruition. That's essentially what I've been working on. The biggest and hardest problem I'm having at the moment is finding new rubber. So we're looking at alternative options for just a rubber hose that we would like to replace because it's got a big hole in it. It's currently covered by lots and lots of duct tape, but that isn't going to survive forever. So need to go and try and find something. The problem with it is that one hole at one end is much larger than the hole at the other end. So whatever we get has to be sort of bigger at one end than it is at the other, and they're substantial sizes. So fingers crossed we'll find something. I have walked miles today and carry a camera around doing it because I was bloody carrying everything else. But walked miles today trying to find just this bit of rubber. Went to a Bunnings, got told, oh no, Repco might have it. So I went to Repco. No, they don't have it. Repco was, I think, 4 kilometres from Bunnings, and Bunnings was 3-point-something or other kilometres from where I was. By the time I got home, I was very glad that I had a pre-recorded interview with Maria Zeee first up, so I could catch my breath. It has been one hell of a day, but a beautiful day, and hopefully a few more coming our way. Saturday, I haven't looked at what the weather's like in Melbourne, but 11 o'clock Saturday morning, look forward to seeing you at the Shrine of Remembrance in Melbourne, if you can get there. Let me have a quick look and see who's saying what here. Sounds like I need an orgy. I don't know if you're trying to say orgy or you really mean an orgy. I don't know. Pete, you know what I did? And you fixed many of them. Where were you when I needed you, brother? Yeah. So fixing it isn't really the issue. Most of the parts, I think all of the parts for the mixer are here. The biggest problem is the rubber. So finding the rubber, and I've had a lot of people send me silicone rubber on silicone hose places. Yes, I'm having troubles with dimensions because these things have got to be, 125 at one end, I think, and 80 mil at the other. And of a certain length. There's no point in having one that's this long because I need one that's this long. So yeah, it's just difficult to find, but we will get something together. Bill fills me with enthusiastic vim and vigor and confidence in his abilities. So, and if that fails, Pete, I'm coming to your place. That simple. It's just, a funny old bit of rubber. That's all it is. And it was very perished to begin with. I've had a bit of a look at the rest of it, and look, it probably was going to go at some stage in the not too distant future anyway. So I'm not kicking myself too badly over that. However, I have learned. Oh, Max Logan, there you go. And he went missing after that, Lisa. Oh, that's interesting. Max Logan. Lugan. Right. All right. I'm going to do a little bit of investigating about that. I did find there are another 5 kids or so, but none of their inventions are anything like what he's talking about. And that level of cosmic comprehension that he seems to have is pretty good. Thank you, Shane. What do we got here? Need a hole in the airbox? I think I've got one of those, mate. And I do actually have quite a large hole in the outer airbox as well, I believe. But Ford dedicated gas car airboxes. Oh, well, this wasn't a dedicated vehicle for Ford that came out with gas, so that might change that. Yep, I see what you're saying. Yes. Okay, right. Okay, so if I put another hole in a certain place, the backfire won't happen like that. Yes, I think the most sensible thing to do might be to just start it on petrol. But I appreciate your advice, Shane. I think I've learned my lesson. I'm not looking for a solution of how to start it on LPG anymore. We got to get rid of it. So just like that, what are you saying? I can't see it. Must be too far back. Beg your pardon. I did star a few comments earlier. J1, cough splutter at the time when I read this. Yeah, got nothing much to say. Daryl Roberts, in my brothers and sisters of the globe, here tonight. Also, Brother Carl, have you been waiting for the alternative answer? The words are getting close to the end of freedom. Yes, I have heard we are reaching rapidly towards close times. We are the 9th. So look, things have got to get a bit worse yet. Donald Trump today or yesterday tried to read a document in court from read it to the judge. The judge wouldn't let him read it. He said, not at this time, it's not appropriate. It may not have been appropriate. I don't know the context, but that document that Trump wants to read out apparently exonerates him completely because it's a disclaimer that was signed by all and sundry going into the whatever this bullshit case happens to be. So it just goes to show that this whole thing is more a movie than we really believe, because it was only yesterday I was telling you that the woman who is behind the prosecution of this case has been arrested. That's the Attorney General of New York, Larissa Harris. Daryl, you seem to be having a few problems waking people up. Okay, you're around Gilgandra. That's a nice part of the world. I've spent the odd night in Gilgandra. So I'm going to say something here, and it's just an observation. I'm not analyzing this or trying to give you any slant to it. Just my observation. And it sounds like Western New South Wales might be similar to Western Victoria. There are very few people that are awake in a lot of these areas, and many people that are deeply offended that you would be thinking anything different to them because they've respected you and your community for however long. I've discovered pretty much west of Geelong, if you were to draw a line up, and I've got to admit I haven't been along the Murray other than to Echuca currently, but the people that I've met, that half of the state are not awake at all, and really, in some cases, don't want to be woken. They're aware something's going on, but it's just too hard to deal with. Now, okay, some of these people may be of a certain age, but others aren't. Others are younger, but they still don't want to know about it, and they shut you down. I want to say hello to Nick, who came with his lovely family and caught me on the beach at Port Fairy. They happened to be down from Hamilton, I think it was, for the fish and chips, I'm sure, and happened to be driving past night last week or the other night, and pulled up to say g'day. Now, he was saying exactly the same thing. In his area, he is an outcast. There are no people that talk about this kind of thing. They are very shunned in the community for speaking openly about it. And I said to him, and I say it again now very loudly, my place, start a my place. You will be amazed how many people come out of the woodwork that think like we do, that didn't think anybody else in the community did. And we've got testimonies from hundreds and hundreds of people who've joined my place simply because they found out there were others like them in the community who thought like they did. And they found them at the first meeting, and there from word from there grew. Now, my place is over 190 strong around the country in a bit over, 2 years. And particularly in the last 12 months, it's grown through the roof. Now, while in any organization that experiences significant growth like that, and an organization that wasn't even an organization to begin with, so the organization has been getting its organization together in the process of growing at this exponential rate. So some messages might have been getting a little bit confused or lost in all the traffic. And I think Darren's going to be clearing the air with that in the not too distant future. And can I just say, it would be an ideal opportunity for more people to come on board, whether you already have a My Place in your local area and you haven't been yet. What are you thinking? Or if there isn't one in your area, Nick, start one. And, if you want, we'll come to town, do a show, and let people know what there is in your town for people to come and see and do, and know that there are like-minded people there. So they're not going to be shunned, because we're not going to go and spend money in places that don't support we the people. If they're just going to do the whole corporate thing, then, well, let somebody else fund that. But the My Place army of people, and hopefully soon a large group of people who want to get on the road and do some traveling, then when we come to town, that could be, anywhere from me to maybe as many as 30 other caravans, tents, motorhomes. It'll be quite a show if we come to town, I think, if we get that many. But that's what the talk is. So if you'd like to be part of that, let me know. Just send me an email, and I'll let you in on the group that we're discussing that in. But have you along, we're going to be traveling anyway. So if you want to come along for the ride, you want to travel in a group, have a little bit of security, and know that you're traveling with like-minded people, then we can look after you. Yeah, Sue, I know you were having the same problem up in Mount Isa, and family doing the same thing. Yeah, I experienced the same issues with family, which isn't, terribly flash. Unfortunately, it is what it is. We've just got to keep pushing and hope they wake up. Phil, your wife had a bit of news. An iron infusion at the holistic doctor's practice, and the nurse administering it says there has been an increase in blood cancer since the spicy dart. Well, who knew? Wow. I am told that in the background there are a couple of senators working feverishly on the TGA, and at some point I imagine the lying bastards are going to get in front of the other lying bastards and lies. I look forward to that day when the lying bastards are called before the lying bastards and are caught telling lies. It looks like Roberts and Antic and Rennick are trying, but they have a minister running guard for the officials, and the minister can take questions on notice, obviously. Will we get to the truth of it? Who knows? But the CSIRO have exposed themselves completely, and clearly there's going to be a lot of work required to get some real scientists back in charge of that organisation. But Malcolm Roberts and co are pushing forward, and I guess everything they're doing is putting it on the record. So at least there is that. We can use that in the future going forward. Yeah, talking about the water and the poisoning of the land and everything else. Watching the water. Well, if you've watched any of my shows, you've seen we've treated a bit of water with electrolysis, and we've seen that there is large amounts of metallic crap inside it. I know Pete from Pinaroo is experiencing something similar. There hasn't been any rain out his way in a long time, but they had 2 brand new, beautifully cleanly washed white cars. And overnight, without any rain, without any wind, without any anything, they came out in the morning and it's all covered in this extremely fine dust that made them quite filthy again. He has a sample. I don't think he took a sample, but that will be very similar to the crap, I'm sure, that they've been spraying from Cooktown South. It is metallic. Well, we know that there's barium in it, there's strontium in it, there is aluminium in it. There are quite a few very harmful things for not only us, but plant life and water life. And of course, it's all well and good to drink rainwater, but if the rain is generated out of those clouds, what do you think it's made out of or contaminated with? Admittedly, I will agree there will be a bit less of it because drop by drop, I think you'll get less. But it is the where it settles that will be the problem. This, I think, in a lot of cases is where we're going to get a lot of heat out of our bushfires because this stuff just falls on the ground and builds up over time. And they've been spraying a lot of it. So whatever we happen to ingest, we happen to ingest. But maybe their goal isn't to so much poison us as to dry out the ground and make sure that when the spark is lit, that the place goes up like a tinder house. And that's going to be the big fright and the big worry for summer. I think Queensland have already experienced a little bit of this. I'm not up there and I haven't been following the stories, but I understand 3 pilots lost their lives while flying up towards somewhere near Sue's Cloncurry way. And that's tragic. In fact, I really hope they're not any of the ones I know that'll be up there fighting fires. But I haven't heard that that's the case, so fingers crossed that isn't. And are they being deliberately lit? Are they catching kids? Are they catching anybody? Or how are these fires starting? It's all I'm interested in learning about at the moment, but we'll have to wait and see for the real answers, I'm sure. All right, I don't think I've got too much more for you tonight, folks. We would be sounds like Max would be about 20 years old now. Well, if he's still with us and hasn't been sold off into some deep state. He's a good looking kid. You know what they'd do to him? They'd sacrifice him in a heartbeat. Yeah, not good. Yeah, you're not wrong about that. 2 pairs of undies, two pairs of tracksuit bottoms, a t-shirt, a shirt, a flanny shirt. Thank you again to my good friend Black Sheep, who took me at a great rush on our way to the airport the day I was flying out of Hobart. I wanted some real flannelette shirts, so we went to a local shop and I bought 4 real flannelette shirts. I say real because the flannelette shirts you get in Queensland are not flannelette. They're great, I suppose, for Queensland, but they are absolutely useless south of the border to keep you warm. However, the ones you get in Tasmania, bloody good tick. So, yeah, I had one of those on and I had the Cali wind cheater on. So at one stage down there in Port Fairy, I had 5 layers of clothing. And then when I stepped outside, I had that big blue jacket, which is waterproof and windproof. And without that, I would have frozen to death. Not the 5 layers of clothing. That kept nothing out. Just a lazy wind, lazy, cold gale. And that's essentially the reason I wound up in Port Fairy for a couple of days. I had a little bit of a moment in the wind driving this thing. And I was quite shocked at the distance that it moved me on the road. So it turned out that the next day was going to be more windy than the day I was on the road, so I thought, all right, well, might hang out and spend another day. Turned out it was just as windy the next day, but I kept moving. We cut through it all right. It does make a huge difference to the fuel figures, I've got to say, especially when you're driving headfirst into the wind. But anybody who's been out there towing things and driving around the country will know all about that. All right, folks, going to love you and leave you for tonight. Tomorrow, there will be a show. It will be from, I suspect, around Frankston area. It might be from my place. Just see what Darren's up to. I don't want to go and inflict myself on them there. But at any rate, I'll probably be hanging around my place, and I'll be doing the show from in here out the front of it, if that's the case. Provided we're running on LPG again. Otherwise, Bill and I still might be working on it on the side of a road somewhere and just avoiding those dickheads on the road.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!